Okay, hi everyone. I'm Michele Gusdorff from Bethel Congregation in Phoenix, and those of you that have cooked and baked with me before, welcome back. It's good to be with you, and those of you that are new, good to see you too, and hope you'll be back to join us again when we do some more cooking and baking. Today we're going to be talking about Purim, and of course when we think of Purim, what do we think about? What kind of baked goods? Hamantaschen, of course. So let's talk about Purim, a little bit about the holiday. There are 4 mitzvot that we are asked to do on the holiday of Purim. And the first one is to hear the reading of the Megillah. The Megillah, of course, is the scroll which contains the story of Esther and how she saved the Jewish people. The second mitzvah is to give 2 foods to a friend. And for many, many years, the tradition has been to include Hamantaschen as part of the foods that you give to a friend. The third is to give charity on the holiday, and the other is to have a festive meal, a mishteh, a large festive meal that you share with family and friends. So those are the 4 mitzvot of Purim. And now let's talk a little bit more about the holiday of Purim. Did you know that there are secrets that are connected with the holiday of Purim? Well, if you know, then this will just be something that you already know. And if you don't know, then I'm glad to be able to share this information with you. The first secret that you may or may not know is that the name of God is not mentioned at all in the book of Esther. We know that God's divine presence is felt in the book because, of course, when Esther asked Mordecai to tell the Jewish people to fast for 3 days and to pray, obviously, who are the Jewish people going to pray to? So we know God's presence is there. Also, we know that Mordecai confronts Haman when Haman wants him to bow down to him, and Mordecai says, I am a Jew and I don't bow down to anyone. We know. Why is that? Because you only bow down to God in God's presence. So to bow down to Haman was to acknowledge his Jewishness and his belief in one God. So that's one secret, that God's name is not contained in the book of Esther. Another is that Esther kept from King Ahasuerus that she was Jewish. When she won the beauty contest and when she was married to him, he never knew that she was Jewish. She only was forced to tell him that she was Jewish when Haman decreed that all the Jews were to be killed in the land of Persia. And she went to King Ahasuerus and she admitted to him that she was Jewish and that her people were going to be killed. The king was shocked. He had no idea that she was Jewish. So that was another secret that was there. On a lighter note, when we eat Hamantaschen, there's a secret filling inside each of those little triangular dough cakes that we make. And that's one of the other little secrets. And the last secret that I'll share with you is when we wear costumes and masks, we conceal our identity. We're secret inside those masks and costumes. So those are some of the secrets that are connected with the holiday. And let's get started. Well, I am going to tell you one more thing before we actually start the baking. This recipe that we're making today, this Hamantaschen recipe, is one that I have used for many, many years. I've used it for, I guess it's over 30 years now. When my children were in religious school in suburban Philadelphia, their first grade teacher asked to have parents come in to bake Hamantaschen on a Sunday morning. I came in and volunteered. And that's when I met this recipe for the first time. It was a gem. It is perfect. It is everything you want in a Hamantaschen recipe. So I asked the teacher for the recipe, and happily she gave it to me. And I will share the one secret ingredient that I have added to the recipe when we are ready to actually add it to the recipe. So that's my little secret for you. But let's get started with the recipe right now. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take 3 eggs that I've already cracked, and I've made sure that there were no shells in there. And here's a little secret for you, a little hint. If you ever drop an eggshell when you crack your eggs into a bowl, just take the remaining eggshell and put it in there and scoop it out. If you try to stick your finger in or a spoon in there, it won't come out. The eggshell will allow it to come out. It's very slippery and the eggshell works. So I'm going to go over to my mixer and I'm going to add the 3 eggs to my mixing bowl. And I'm going to mix them for a few minutes, and I will tell you exactly how many when I go back. And whoops, excuse me. Let's get this attached and plugged in. And this is something I forgot to do, to plug it in. All right, here we go. Okay, welcome back. So now I'm going to add the sugar. I beat the eggs for 3 minutes. Now we're adding 1 cup of sugar, and I'm going to beat this for 2 minutes, and then we'll come back again. And I'm going to make sure that all of this deliciousness goes in there, or not. And I'm going to beat it for 2 minutes. So what I'm doing now is I've got 4 cups of flour and 3 teaspoons of baking powder. Baking powder is laying on top, and I'm going to add it very, very slowly to the mixer. When you're adding flour, and this is an enormous quantity, you want to do it very, very slowly so that you don't end up with flour flying all over the place. And you'll know that you're done when the flour moves away from the sides of the bowl and starts to stick to the beater. Okay. Making a little bit of a mess, and that's to be expected. If you noticed before when I was adding the orange juice and the oil, I just did spill a little bit off the side, but that's cleaned up. And you can see the flour is incorporating. Just add it very, very slowly. And sometimes what I'll do is when I see that it's kind of flying up in the air, I'll put my hands over the top. All right, we're almost done. All right, this should be the last addition of the flour. This actually looks pretty good. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the beater, and I'm going to take the dough off of the beater. This is actually a sugar cookie dough recipe. You can make delicious sugar cookies from it, and I have actually done that after I've made all the Hamantaschen, and I've used up my filling, and there's still some dough left. What I'll do is I will just make round circles, flatten them out, maybe put cinnamon and sugar on top of them, or leave them plain, and I have delicious sugar cookies from them. All right, now, just to make sure that the flour is very well incorporated, I'm going to take the bowl back over here, and I'm going to stir it around because I can see some of the flour did not get totally mixed in. So what you want to do is you want to go down, scoop up from the bottom as best you can, and just make sure that your dough is well mixed. And I think this looks pretty good. I really don't see any flour at the bottom. Okay, so here's what it looks like. All right, and I'm just going to leave the dough for a minute. And if you look carefully, you might be able to see some of those orange flecks. I know I can see them down there from the orange zest that was added. All right, now we're going to go to the next step, which is the filling. And with this, I'm going to take an apple, Granny Smith apple. If you remember the last time that we were together, I made apple strudel, and we use Granny Smith apples for that. This really is my favorite apple for baking. I think I mentioned it then. With this recipe, I recommend that you use a Granny Smith apple, or if you really have another favorite, I would suggest that favorite you might consider using would be a Golden Delicious apple. They really have a very sweet flavor. They're very, very moist. And they do very, very well in this recipe. It might seem a little unusual to you. Why am I peeling an apple to go in the filling? Well, this goes back to my childhood. My mother was a kosher caterer in Philadelphia, and I must say, she knew her stuff, and she was a little critical when we would get the Shalach Monas baskets from our neighbors for Purim, and she would taste their filling. She wasn't critical of the dough. It was always the filling. She would always say, it's dry. And at that time, people didn't put cherries or apricots or lemon into their Hamantaschen. It was always poppy seed or prune. You remember the name for poppy seed was lekvar? I'm sorry, not poppy seed. For prune was lekvar, and for poppy seed it was mun. So my mother used to take the prune and also the poppy seed fillings, and her secret ingredient that she would add to it to make sure it was moist was a Granny Smith apple that she grated on a box grater, and the other ingredient was raisins. So I've already plumped these raisins, and the way that you plump raisins is that you add them to a glass or a bowl with hot water, and you let them sit for 5, 10, 15 minutes, and then you dry them off, and then you add them to whatever item it is that you're baking. Now I'm going to take a half of the Granny Smith apple, and I'm going to grate it. This is not precise, because of course apples are all different sizes. So I'm going to take about a half of it, go a little bit on this side. All right, I think that's pretty good. And I've already got my bowl of poppy seed ready, and I'm going to add the raisins to it. And I'm going to mix them in a little bit. I want to warn you that poppy seeds will stick to everything that they touch. All right, now, I'm going to take this and add the apples to this. So when you make your Hamantaschen, you are going to see these little white flakes of something in there, and it's going to be the Granny Smith apples. Not to worry, it doesn't alter anything. They're just going to be in there. The raisins and the apples make this a little moister. You can see this is fairly stiff, the poppy seed that comes from a can. And by adding the apples, which has a lot of moisture into it, it really loosens it up quite a bit. And the raisins just give it another dimension of flavor. All right, that looks pretty good. All right, so let me move all my items away. All right. So now I have my dough and I have the filling. And as I said, poppy seed filling will get everywhere. So I've got a paper towel that I'm going to keep right next to me because I have a feeling I'm going to need it to wipe down different surfaces, because I'm really afraid those poppy seeds are going to get all over. All right, now I always have a little cup that I have for a flour that I keep around because when you're baking, you don't want to have to go into your very large tub to take out flour. Having a little container that you can use, that you can sprinkle around, makes it a lot easier. Now I'm going to take, oh, I forgot to mention, something I stopped doing many years ago was rolling out Hamantaschen dough. And I know you're going to say, that's heresy. You always roll out Hamantaschen dough and you use your little circles and then you gather the scraps up again. What happens when you gather those scraps up again that have already been rolled out? They're dry. And then you're adding the moist dough to it, and it just doesn't work. I figured out a couple of years ago, take your small cookie scoop, use it for your dough, and it works. And I shared this secret with a friend who makes a lot of Hamantaschen like I do. She thanked me profusely. She said it has made making Hamantaschen so much easier for her. So what I do is I take a scoop of the dough, and I'm going to pat my fingers. I'm going to put the dough in there. I'm going to roll it around gently, get my glasses on so I can see exactly what I'm doing. And I'm going to go pat, pat, pat with my 3 fingers. I do not use a palm. And I'm going to take that circle and I'm going to spread it until it's about this big. What do you think, about 3 inches or so? I think that's about what it is. So I'm now going to take my filling and I'm going to do about a half of a teaspoon. All right, and I'm using a long-handled spoon to make it easier to guide it in. And now, watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the edges I'm going to gently squeeze them together to make a Hamantaschen. And I'm going to go get my metal spatula. Here's my cookie sheet with more parchment paper. I'm using parchment paper. And I'll put my Hamantaschen here. All right, now let's do this again. Scoop it into your hand. Roll it just a little bit. Make sure you have flour in the middle. And go pat, pat, pat with your fingers. And just spread it out until you have about a 3-inch circle. And I can definitely see those little orange flakes in there. And I can see I've got poppy seed on my fingers already. All right. About 1/2 teaspoon. And I'm going to use my spatula to make sure. All right, I might put more flour down next time. Now, if your circle's not exactly perfect and some of the filling oozes out, that's okay. They're homemade. This is not a machine that is cutting them and making them. So I'm going to do one more with you. And then I'm going to fill up the tray and get them in the oven. So I'll show you one more time my technique and see if this works for you when you make your Hamantaschen at home. Well, I guess I am using both hands after all, just not using the palm, but I'm basically tapping it with 3 fingers. Okay, here we go. About 1/2 spoon. I'm putting the extra right back into the bowl. And I'm going to make sure that it's going to come up easily. Yep, it will. So I'm going to gather it around, pinch the bottom together, gather the top up, and there I have my 2 corners. Okay? The nice thing about having this on YouTube is that you can stop, pause, and then watch it again. So I've got 3 Hamantaschen here. We're going to shut the video down now, and I'm going to fill up the tray and bake them, and then I'll come back again and I'll show you the finished product. Okay, let's see if the Hamantaschen are done. They've been baking for 10 minutes. Ah, these are gorgeous. What do you think? Do you think now you can try making them at home yourselves? Watch the video again, and you too can make delicious Hamantaschen. These are gorgeous. Now, I want to say something about another filling, because I use poppy seed, and I have a very large jar of prune filling. I've never used this particular brand before. I am not getting any commissions from Solo, the manufacturer, but I couldn't find Solo prune filling in the supermarket. I did find this at a specialty store, and I'm going to do the same thing with this that I did with the poppy seed filling. And I'll show you the poppy seed again, which is mixing it with raisins and mixing it with the shredded apples. So I did not make the prune today, but when you make these at home, if you want to make the prune, the lekvar, and you're going to make the poppy seed or the mun, just remember each one gets 1/2 Granny Smith apple peeled and grated, and 1/2 cup of raisins that you have soaked in hot water first and then put through a colander so that the water drips off. Mix them through, and then I like using the iced teaspoons with the longer handles. I think it makes it easier. Just make sure you always have a paper towel nearby in case you have a spill. You can also use cherry pie filling, apricot filling. If you want to be adventurous, you can use a strawberry filling out there. You can use lemon filling, whatever filling you would like. Don't feel that you have to use the traditional. Try whatever you want. So we're doing our grand finale now. We're all set up, and the recipe should be on your screen right now. And hopefully you'll be able to take a screenshot and zoom in on it and follow the recipe. I am showing you on this plate, I have already made cherry and I've made apricot, and here are some of the poppy seed ones that I made today. And I hope that you will try these recipes for Purim, and that you'll enjoy making the Hamantaschen dough the same way I did, and that you will no longer have to roll out your Hamantaschen dough. you can buy one of those little scoopers. You can buy it, I think it's a 1-inch little scooper. Have fun doing this, and happy Purim to everyone.